Hello and welcome to Monday Moment. We are joined this week with a special guest, Cecilia Rubino. Did I say that right?
Rubino.
Rubino. I always pronounce that wrong.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So our special guest, Cecilia, who is the director of our special upcoming documentary theater piece called Gage County, Nebraska. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But first of all, Cecilia, thank you for joining me on Monday Moments here. I kind of sprung this on you. We were doing something else in the auditorium a little bit ago, and then I said, hey, want to be on Facebook Live? So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So tell us just a little bit about yourself. Just kind of introduce yourself to the community, because I would imagine, with the exception of the 16 members of the cast and the few crew people, most people don't know who you are.
So what a privilege to be here in Beatrice and also at this beautiful, wonderful community resource, the Community Players. So thank you for having me. My name is Cecilia Rubino. I'm a writer and a director and a filmmaker, actually. I am a professor of theater in Manhattan at a place called the New School, which has a long legacy of advocacy and the arts. I direct theater pieces, I write theater pieces, and I have worked in this field of documentary theater, which I find to be very provocative and which has a really interesting legacy in American history. So it's been a privilege both working on this complicated, difficult story, but also collaborating with these 16 wonderful actors here and this incredible staff at Community Players.
So something that a lot of our community probably hasn't had a lot of exposure to is the concept and the idea of documentary theater. So could you maybe explain to us, in a nutshell, what exactly documentary theater is?
So documentary theater has a long history in, again, American theater, and essentially it's creating the theater of the real. So it has other titles. The title is verbatim theater. It's also called legislative theater or theater of testimony. Those are all phrases that kind of connect themselves to documentary theater. But essentially it's taking real documents, so trial transcripts, court transcripts, interviews, journals, newspaper articles, things that are actually in the public record, and collaging or compositing those materials into a play, into an event, a theatrical event. And the interesting thing, and the purpose, actually, in some of the original documentary theater pieces, which come out of the 1930s, they were called the living newspapers. And you have right here across the street a municipal building that came out of the Work Progress Administration. You can see from the front of that building that it was made during that era. But during the WPA, there was funding during the Depression for artists, and many artists picked up the genre of, again, bringing the news to life in the theater. One of those was Clifford Odettes at the Group Theater. He did a famous play called Waiting for Lefty in 1935, where he literally lifted out of the newspaper headlines things about a taxi strike in New York City. And that particular play then ignited a union movement, actually, in the 30s. From there, you have different moments in American history, social movements, which pick up, again, theater as a place where communities could gather and wrestle with difficult issues and social issues. Then there are these benchmarks in American theater, one of which is the Laramie Project. So in 2000, a group of theater people from New York had heard about the murder of a young gay man, Matthew Shepard, in Laramie, Wyoming. And they went and created a documentary theater piece interviewing everyone in the town about this complex case, but also a human rights issue, a hate crime issue. And that particular play, which came out in 2000, became the most produced play for almost a decade in American theaters. It was a play that was produced in red states and blue states and churches and in high schools, and it really moved the needle around understanding the LGBTQ community. And there are other plays, documentary plays. Another one that I'll point out is The Exonerated, which takes up the issue of the death penalty. And it's told through the perspective of 6 real people who were definitively exonerated, and it tells their stories in a collaged fashion. And it was again produced all around the country, and compelling, a poetic piece. So it's been a privilege to engage in this medium, a medium, again, that I think theater really importantly has to offer to all of us, because theater is about multiple perspectives. And to me, theater is a zone of questions. It's not a place where people dish out answers. We ask questions, and the questions are hard, and we don't necessarily have answers to them, but we have to keep asking the questions. So again, it's just been really a privilege to collaborate on devising this new work with this community.
So how would you describe the difference between documentary theater and maybe a more traditional theater piece that maybe most of our audience is familiar with?
Well, the difference is that, again, documentary theater insists that all of the words spoken by the actors actually come from historic documents, from resources. So that can be an interview, that can be a newspaper story. And one of the important parts of collaborating with the community here in Beatrice was, again, to get the voices of real people that were here. So it's not a writer up in some room in Brooklyn who's coming up with the drama. It's literally finding and again, putting together a multiplicity of voices that are authentic, that are real. And it's a challenge, because it'd be easier just to make stuff up if, you know, and the thing about it is, here's the interesting thing. In some ways, fiction can be a challenge and truer. I mean, life is stranger than fiction. I think this particular case, which we explore in Gage County, Nebraska, is absolutely clear that life is stranger than fiction. But what we're asked to do in theater is to compress maybe even 40 years of information into something that's asks us to look at, through in 90 minutes at a story, and it asks us to do that again through multiple voices and multiple characters. So that's the difference between documentary theater and drama, even docudrama, is it's not fictionalized. It may have different perspectives, it may have different characters who come up with contradictory information, but the author who is compositing things is not making up the words that are in the piece.
Yeah. I think it's a really good distinction for everyone to be aware of going into the piece that we are running this weekend. And so you've been working with our community of actors for, since April. I think that's when we started rehearsals-ish. And just how has your experience working here in Beatrice been on this project and with the volunteers that you've been able to work with?
It has been a phenomenal privilege. I'm so impressed that the 16 actors that we have, they're working all kinds of they have busy lives, they have busy jobs, and they generously offer their time 5 nights a week for several hours in the evening. And it's been a roller coaster. It's been a tough process, because not only were there tons and tons of rewrites from the original scaffolding of a text, but then they're also being asked to do something that many of them haven't done before. They're being asked to work as an ensemble. And they're being asked to be on stage for all 90 minutes of a production, and working sometimes in a physical theater style where they're collaborating on the storytelling. So if you think about being a chorus, and some people have sung in church choirs or choruses, it takes a lot of collaboration, and it takes a lot of work to work together. So it's not just a star vehicle for one actor. It really is all 16 actors play hugely important roles in this ensemble. And I'm so grateful to them for their generosity and their time. And I really want to give a big shout out to everybody on the staff, Jamie, here, from you to Brandon your professionalism. We had a tech that was flawless. I mean, where else in the world do you have so many people that are so organized and again, generously offering their time as volunteers to make something beautiful, to make a theater piece. I'm really impressed.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. So the show is Gage County, Nebraska, and it is running this weekend for 1 week only. Opens on Friday, so it runs Friday, Saturday at 7:30 p.m. and Sunday at 2 p.m. Tickets are selling very quickly. The run is over half full already, and opening night is at about 75% capacity now. Following opening night, we will have a talkback Q&A with Cecilia and with Nanfu Wang, the filmmaker of the documentary series that this is associated with. And so I think Friday is a great opportunity for people who maybe have questions about this project and about the process and how it impacts the community. That would be a great night to come and hear a little bit more after they see the show. But you can get tickets at the box office, 402-228-1801, or you can go online and order tickets. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up, Cecilia?
No, just thank you, and thanks to the whole community of Beatrice for welcoming us and for being willing to engage in a project that I think is really worthy. And so I just want to thank you.
All right, and thank you for your involvement and your creativity and really getting us to think and work more. And so, yeah, it's been a great time.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, and we will see you next week.